Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. On tonight's episode, we're going to break down the Orioles signing of reliever Andrew Kittredge as they round out their bullpen. And we're also going to open up the mailbag to talk about what might be a realistic expectation for Jackson Holliday in 2025. And all of that is coming up on tonight's episode of Orioles on the Verge, which is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or the first time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, to NHL and UFC, BetOnline is the number one source for sports betting source for the new year. From touchdowns to three-pointers and hat tricks, BetOnline has you covered on every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. And as we like to do at the top of every episode, we have some new members of our Patreon community to welcome. And for that, I will turn it over to Bob.
Yes, please take advantage of our 25% off for 2025 special we have going on at least this month. We probably could keep going all year. You never know, but just in case we don't, get on it right now. Just like B did at the single A level, very much appreciated. And Baseball Fan 982, aka Alex, signed up for the double A level for a year up front. So you get that 25% off, whether it's a monthly or yearly, that first month/year. Appreciate you guys for taking advantage of it. And I hope you enjoy the content and you want to keep your subscription.
Absolutely. And as a reminder, we're running our top 50 prospects countdown list, and you can join right now at the $3, $5, or $10 levels in our Patreon community and have access to the remainder of the countdown as well as the episodes that have aired up to this point. We just posted the 40th ranked prospect on Wednesday, and we're going to continue throughout the month of January and well into February with the countdown. So you're not going to want to miss that. And when February rolls around, the Orioles report to spring training, they'll have at least one new reliever in their bullpen as they officially announced an agreement earlier this week with reliever Andrew Kittredge on a 1-year, $9 million deal. It amounts to a $10 million guarantee, as the contract also includes a $9 million club option with a $1 million buyout for 2026. Kittredge had spent most of his career in Tampa Bay, but pitched last season for the St. Louis Cardinals and had a nice bounce back in his first full season back from Tommy John surgery, posting good numbers for the Cardinals as one of their steadier relief options, including a 2.80 ERA, 23.3% strikeout rate, and 7% walk rate in 70 and two-thirds innings out of the bullpen. And that's been the key for Kittredge throughout his career, which has really been the ability to limit walks. The high mark in his career came back in 2021 when he was selected as an all-star. Not a common thing to see among non-closers, and Kittredge was not the Rays' primary closer that year, but he was dominant, posting a 1.88 ERA and 71 and two-thirds innings pitched. Since then, he's had Tommy John surgery, maybe not quite up to that level of dominance at this point, but still a very effective reliever. Nick, I'll start with you on this. What are your thoughts on this signing?
The exact type of move that I assumed was coming. Like when you saw this team move on from Jacob Webb and Danny Coulombe, like a couple weeks ago, we were talking about all of that. I said I think the Orioles are targeting someone. Like they have a plan here. It's not Cade Stroud, Luis Gonzalez aren't going to fill those innings. It's not going to be Brandon Young. Like Cade Stroud and Luis Gonzalez, those guys are on the 40-man roster. They have earned a shot, but their value comes in having options, right? They're going to do something, and it's not going to be Tanner Scott. For the love of God, please don't let it ever be Tanner Scott again. But it's not going to be that big of a move, but something really solid to help, not even just like the fringes, low leverage innings, not the 6th inning guy, but something to help secure the later innings in these games. And Kittredge is that. I think it, because until I see Felix Bautista back out there on that mound, dominating again on a regular basis, I think it's fair to question, like, what is he going to look like when he comes back? And even if he does come back and he is Felix again, then how hard are the Orioles going to push him, especially early on in the year? So I like having Kittredge. He's a veteran. He's been setting up closers for a long time now. He does struggle against lefties. He's got those splits, but Sir Anthony Dominguez didn't. last season. Fairly even splits there. You've got Perez, you've got Soto, you've got a good group of lefties. Keegan Aiken's coming off a great year. You got enough lefties there where it's not like protecting Kittredge, but you've got enough for Brandon Hyde in this organization to play with late in games there. So I don't know, keeps the ball on the ground, does a good job of limiting free passes. He's, like you said, he's going to be another year removed from Tommy John, even though he worked a significant number of innings last season. So that's a good sign there. I don't know. It was the strangest thing about this signing was that I feel like it was largely accepted by the fan base on social media, which that's a small bubble that we are a part of and pay attention to, but it's a very angry bunch. And I don't know, there was too much positivity in the mentions. I didn't know what to do when I saw people like praising this signing. And the only like negative comment I think that was in our mentions at least was like, I don't know. He got worked too hard last year with St. Louis. It's like, is he going to be able to stand up for that again this year with the Orioles? I'm like, if that's the worst, then I mean, what's going on here? It was just weird, but yeah, it's a good signing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I like this signing. Yeah, I don't know if he was necessarily the plan because we'll get to Jeff Hoffman and everything that went on with that, but especially when you consider that he was like a backup plan when something else fell through, aka Jeff Hoffman, then yeah, I especially like it. I mean, the slider, he's always had one of the most wicked sliders you could ever see, considering he had 100th percentile chase rate in 2021 when he was dominant. And guess what? Last year he had 100th percentile chase rate with his pitches there in 2024 as well. So, and it's weird that he gets a lot of whiffs in the zone. He gets more chase than anybody in Major League Baseball, and yet his strikeout rate not that high. So maybe the Orioles feel like they could get his strikeouts up. They can tinker around a little bit more. I know he already spams the slider. It's like 50% of his pitches are sliders, but maybe they feel like they could even get more strikeout potential out of him. But the first thing I thought was that here's Jacob Webb, but better and more proven. And yeah, if Yennier Cano is healthy and Andrew Kittredge is healthy, two guys that Kittredge had 74 appearances last year. Cano has been the workhorse for the Orioles the past 2 years. If you could use these guys in more of like a fireman role who come in and get the last 2 outs of an inning or matchups here with righties like Vivek and Nick said, dominates righties, has struggled against lefties. Maybe you try to limit him in that role, especially with so many lefties in the bullpen potentially already. Yeah, I think there's nothing not to like about the signing. And yeah, it's either a 1 year, $10 million deal or a 2 year, $18 million deal. And considering the Orioles were offering a 3 year, $40 million deal for Hoffman. Yeah, I think the wallet is open. It's just trying to get players willing to accept our money this offseason.
Before we get into Kittredge, before we get into Hoffman, I'll just add my thoughts on Kittredge real quick, which is that I do think it's a good move for the Orioles. And Nick's right. They should have enough cushion in the bullpen that they don't have to worry too much about Kittredge being kind of a righty specialist. When you look at his numbers, it is pretty glaring that the platoon splits are definitely more towards right-handed hitters in his favor. Hopefully that turns out to be the case where you can get healthy, productive seasons from even just two of Perez, Aiken, or Soto would go a long way here. I will throw this out, though, which is I would not be shocked if they added another reliever somewhere along the line. And it might be a really under-the-radar type move that happens after spring training starts. Remember, that's how they acquired Coulomb. It was late in spring training when they got him a few years ago. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see another move. But this is an area of the roster where if the Orioles decide to go with this group to start out the season, I'd be comfortable with it.
Yeah, I already felt good about the bullpen. And then you mentioned Yennier Cano. I don't want to say he's the biggest winner in all of this if everything goes as planned and everybody stays healthy, but I really like Yennier Cano, them being able to like back him off a little bit and use him in a more specialized role. Just everyone. It's kind of like the whole couple of years ago with Dylan Tate. When Dylan Tate went down, and we talked about this before he went down, it was like Dylan Tate is like the linchpin here that's just going to cause everything else to erupt, and that's exactly what happened. And I feel like bringing in Kittredge that helps ease all of this. It's a nice cushion, like Zach said. And also just that safety of what if Felix comes back and he's not King Felix in the very beginning, and it takes him a month or it takes him 2 months. Then, okay, sorry, you got Sir Anthony Dominguez, you've got Kittredge there in the back, the late innings. You've got enough to play with here until he's ready to roll. But best case scenario, if everything's cooking, yeah, the bullpen it's solid. Yeah, I do think there could be another addition, but as of maybe it's Ronsny Contreras, maybe he sticks through. But I do agree that we're going to see somebody else a waiver claim. But in the meantime, I really like this bullpen like a lot.
Yeah, Felix Bautista, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Ynier Cano, Andrew Kittredge, Gregory Soto, Ciano Perez, and then you could either do, Colin Selby, Keegan Aiken, Albert Suarez. There's a lot of options there at the tail end, and even an outside person that's not in the organization right now. So yeah, I think feel pretty good about the bullpen, and maybe if like we've been predicting, there's still a trade up our sleeves, then maybe someone that's currently in the rotation could either has to go back to AAA or stuffed into the bullpen.
Let's pivot now to talk about Jeff Hoffman. Now, this is a pitcher that had been speculated to be a fit for the Orioles. Possibly they wanted him in the bullpen, or if they sought to stretch him out into a starter either in 2025 or later on in a long-term deal. And that at one point seemed to be the direction that the Orioles were going in. We learned this last week after Hoffman signed a 3-year, $33 million deal with the Toronto Blue Jays. Robert Murray over at Fansided reported that earlier Hoffman and the Orioles had agreed to terms on a 3-year, $40 million contract. However, the Orioles pulled out of the deal after the physical revealed some issues with his throwing shoulder that concerned the Orioles. Now, by all reports that we've seen so far, the Orioles did try to re-engage with Hoffman and work out another deal restructured after the physical. That ultimately didn't happen. It's also since been reported that the Atlanta Braves backed out of their own agreement with Hoffman over results of a physical. And although I don't believe the issue in their physical has been specified, kind of easy to draw a conclusion they may have had the same concern the Orioles did about the throwing shoulder. And by the way, the Braves were reported to have agreed to a 5-year deal with Hoffman. So Hoffman lands the division rival Blue Jays after the Orioles back out of a deal. It feels like this is one of those things that until the Orioles are proven wrong, a lot of people are going to sweat, because we know Hoffman's a good pitcher, and it stings that he does land in the American League East. But maybe long-term this proves to be the right move, but of course we can't really know that now. So just based on what we have in front of us, what are your guys' thoughts on this?
I love and still do if he's healthy. I love Hoffman. I think he would have been a great signing to, either use in the back end of the bullpen or try to make him into a starter, maybe bullpen this year, transition him to starter next year. Would have loved the deal, but I don't really understand why people are upset that they backed out of a deal where the MRI on his shoulder didn't turn up too good. And I'm glad that more news came out that the Braves had the same thought when they gave him his physical. So it's pretty funny that the Blue Jays can only get a guy to sign for them when he's backed out of 2 other deals previously because of a bad physical, bad medical report. But yeah, especially because we talked about a couple minutes ago, we got another guy in Andrew Kittredge that could slide in there. Maybe definitely not as good as Jeff Hoffman if he's healthy and on his game, but another guy that can slide into the back end of a bullpen. I just don't understand why fans were upset about this. Obviously, if he stays healthy the whole time, it is a dominant, awesome pitcher that maybe he has a chance to be, then it sucks you missed out on him. But to me, the risk is not worth the reward in that. And like Connor Newcomb talked about on Locked On Orioles, it's pretty cool that the Orioles were pretty officially ready to sign a pretty much relief pitcher to a 3-year deal at premium prices.
Yeah, I know I wasn't alone in wanting Jeff Hoffman before all this news came out. I really like that the plan of you bring him in on a multi-year deal with the intention of 2025 being the year where he's in the role that Kittredge is now going to serve in. if all is going well, maybe you start to stretch him out a little bit at the end of the year, or you just go into this saying, hey, you are the setup guy. You're a late inning guy here with Felix in 2025, but 2026, when the offseason starts, next offseason starts, we'll put you on the starters all-season plan to build you up. You're going to enter spring training in the mix for a rotation spot. You're going to get every opportunity to start for us down the road. And I think the $40+ million multi-year deal kind of tells you that might have been what was on the table, especially when the Orioles were reportedly in on Clay Holmes to kind of make that same transition. And so if they liked Hoffman stuff enough to give him that kind of money, I imagine that might have been the plan here with Hoffman. I think no one's ever said anything officially, but I would have been 100% down with that move. And again, I don't think this move, the $40 million, again, means that they're going to go off and they're looking to add big in the bullpen elsewhere and give Tanner Scott that kind of money. I really do think that was future starter money that they were promising Hoffman. It was annoying when the failed physical was announced, and then more annoying, he goes to Toronto. But then when that Atlanta report came out as well, like I agree, I'm fine. Like I have no more qualms about Jeff Hoffman. If he beats the odds, go beat the odds. Like good for you, man. Go get your money. Go enjoy what 450 winning percentage baseball in Toronto, 40% winning percentage. Like go enjoy a mediocre season there with the Blue Jays before they have to like force to tear things down. But in the meantime, like if you're going to open your mouth and talk crap, you know what? Is that opening series? Orioles are in Toronto, yep. Right? I hope he's there opening day, and I hope it's I don't even care who it is, Colton Cowser, Jackson Holliday. Hopefully, I don't care. Send one deep and take the win off Jeff Hoffman on opening day. That would be a beautiful, beautiful opening day. But yeah, I don't feel bad about this one. Like, go ahead, go try your hand north of the border there.
I agree. It would have been cool because, like you said, after this year, Eflin's a free agent, Sagano's a free agent, Morton's a free agent. You know, who knows? Bradish is coming back. You could have slid Hoffman into a starter's role, but yeah, at least when he inevitably goes on the IL with shoulder discomfort, he can go coach his kids' lacrosse teams with the names that he has chosen to give them. So,
speaking of Jackson Holliday, we're going to open up a mailbag question. And we have gotten a lot of mailbag questions in the last few weeks over our Discord channel. And we just haven't had a chance to get to them because we actually haven't done a mailbag segment since the end of last year. And some of those questions now are out of date because there were a few in there about Jeff Hoffman. So sorry we didn't get to those earlier, but we are diving back into the mailbag tonight to pull out this question from Alex because it's probably something we were going to talk about sometime here in the next few weeks, certainly during spring training. And that is, what are your expectations for Jackson Holliday's 2025 season? Now, I feel like we've been on a little bit of a roller coaster with Holliday over the last year where a lot of hype going into camp. The three of us certainly believed that he looked really good in spring training and was ready to break camp with the Orioles. That didn't happen. He comes up to the majors after a very short stint in AAA, struggles, gets sent back down only to come up later in the summer. And while he was not as overmatched the second time around, he still had his fair share of ups and downs. So an underwhelming rookie season from a statistical standpoint, but there's still a lot of reasons to be optimistic about Jackson Holliday, which I suspect we'll get into with this discussion. But Nick, I'll start with you. What is a reasonable expectation for Holliday as we look ahead to the 2025 season?
Well, looking at projections first, I don't know what oopsie projections are.
They're new. I see people are loving them. I love the name, but yeah, at least it's a newer thing, and at least it's not identical to the other ones that are always popping up.
Yeah, there's an article here. It looks like out maybe after show reading for me, but I'm no longer going to reference Steamer or the Bat, whatever. It's only oopsie projections from here on out. We are an oopsie podcast. Projections have Holliday. I'm gonna. A 108, 109 WRC plus, right around 10 home runs, give or take, 12% walk rate, 230 something batting average. I think that's a fair baseline. Trying to be temper expectations a little bit. I think that's a fair baseline. If that's the season he has this year, you're obviously not going to be excited. It's not the end of the world if that's the type of season he has, because he just turned 21 years old, like a couple of weeks ago. So he's still extremely young, with still a ton of potential in that bat and in the glove. But if that's the baseline, like that's okay, paired with progression in many other areas in the lineup. But I think the power shines through this season. That's my expectation for Holiday. He started lifting the ball more the second time he came up. The average exit velocity was above league average last year. He had a 45% hard hit rate, which was very good. He had a stretch there, and it was only a week, but he OPS over 1,000, hit 4 home runs. So he's proven he can do it in the big leagues. He of course needs to prove he can do that across a full season, more than just 5-6 days he did that in. But still, he's done it. He was a 20-year-old when he did it, after struggling mightily the first time and being sent back down. It's kind of also like a lot like we saw with Colton Cowser his first time up. It seemed like there's a lot of hard hit balls right at defenders. And just the batted ball gods had their like rookie hazing with Holiday as well. And so, I'm not saying he's going to have a Colton Cowser-esque rise this year, but I think we see 15 plus home runs from Jackson Holiday this year. I think he's going to surprise a lot of people in the power department.
I am saying that he's going to have a Colton Cowser-esque rise this year because, he just turned 21 a month ago. He's going to continue to improve. I'm sure he's already gotten stronger since the season ended into now. He's just barely getting into his like man strength. The growth plates are almost fully grown out, and that never gets old. And I don't know. I'm a believer in the toe tap that he showed off at the very end of last year, and you see it when he released. I don't know if it was him, but there was video of him hitting in a cage or at least working out, and the toe tap was still present. So you have to believe he's comfortable with it, in getting more and more comfortable with it, and it's going to stick. And we've seen in his entire minor league career that he's going to hit for average. He's going to get on base. He's got more power than I think people expect. I'm kind of with Vivek's prediction here. Around a 750 OPS with 15 homers, 25 doubles, 20 stolen bases. Yeah, I could see something like that. I could honestly see even better than that. I could see him breaking out in a big way if the OPS over 800, all-star. Like, I think the potential is there. Jordan Westberg didn't light the world on fire in 2023, and then 2024 comes along, and he's an all-star. He's killing the ball until he got hurt later in the year, as we've talked about. But, yeah, I'm a big believer in Jackson Holiday. He was the number one prospect in baseball for a reason. I don't think anything's changed. He was 20 years old. He went through some growing pains, and, I'm very excited to see what he does this year.
Yeah, Vivek's numbers are probably, if that's where his season ended, I would consider it a success, because at least he's going in the right direction and you're starting to see the power come through. When you look at some of the projections, and I think we'll stick with Oopsie for now. Is that our official projection system going forward, is Oopsie?
Yeah, I'm putting it in the social media handles right now.
And if we're wrong, we just say, oopsie.
Well, if you look at Oopsie in comparison to FGDC and Steamer over at Fangraphs, they all kind of tell the same story, which is a batting average probably in the mid to upper 230s, an OPS that's going to be somewhere in the low 700s with a 2 to 2.5 win season. I agree with Nick. That's not the most exciting thing in the world, but it does show some progression. And honestly, what I think I'm a little more concerned about is if the Orioles are going to go with Holiday in the platoon situation, which I think they're going to do for at least the first few months of this year, is what does the right-handed alternative to that look like, whether it's Ramon Urias or Jorge Mateo, knowing how streaky both of those guys can be. Either way, though, you got to find a way for the offense to pick up a little bit at second base this year, because I'm looking at the splits position by position for the Orioles last year, and I knew second base was a weak spot, but I'll put this out there as a trivia question. what was the combined OPS for players who had plate appearances at second base for the Orioles last season?
I definitely don't. I have no idea, but I'm gonna say it was pretty low and go with 640.
512.
Not as low as Nick, but not as high as Bob. 628.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, that could definitely be a room for improvement there. That's for sure.
And I it's not blind optimism either to be high on Jackson Holiday going into next year. Like, it's not putting on orange colored glasses. You don't have to squint very hard at all to look at what he did and the adjustments that he made, both physically and in the data. Like, there's a lot to look at here and be like, there's breakout potential here. And again, if even if the power doesn't show, but he hits for a high average and he's walking a bunch and he's a threat on the base paths and he's a solid defender, that's great. I was hoping we'd get that Jackson Holiday last year in the major leagues. But I just think, man, it's like you mentioned Jordan Westburg. That's the way people are talking about Jordan Westburg. You talk about Jordan Westburg projections. I mean, seems to be on another planet going into 2025. I'm fully bought in. I am drafting Jordan Westburg literally every single day already. If Jordan Westburg can do this, and you look at Jackson Holiday's pedigree and his potential and his profile in the minors, I don't see why Holiday couldn't tap into that power already this year. And again, surprise a lot of people. And if I'll take more strikeouts and fewer walks if he's going to tap into that power this year and smooth it out down the road. But again, I just don't think it's not crazy to think that Holiday can have a pretty solid breakout season this year.
Yeah, Jordan Westburg, oopsie, is actually a little bit lower on him than Steamer and FGDC. But between 3 and 3.5 WAR player, oopsie has him at a 113 WRC plus. The other's 122. That's like a 750 OPS versus 780. Yeah, I think everyone loves Westburg, and I don't think you would have said the same thing a year ago coming into spring training. So I believe in a Holiday breakout. I believe in a Kobe Mayo breakout. Maybe Mayo plays third base against lefties, Westburg second base. Or obviously it could be easier to just put Ramon Arias or Jorge Mateo in against lefties. But there's so much to be excited about this spring training and this baseball season.
I'll put this out there as one final thought for Holiday. Seeing what he can do well to major leagues already. Let's say that he barely cracks 240 or even hits a little bit below 240. OPS is in the low 700s, but the defense grades out really high at second base. And maybe he's even a Gold Glove finalist. I know we don't care individually that much about Gold Glove awards, but it's an acknowledgement that he's a very good defender at the position. Would you see that as any kind of silver lining?
Yeah, I mean, he just turned 21, so it's not like it's make or break this year. Like, he could struggle this year again and then break out at 22 years old, the old age of 22 next year in 2026. But yeah, I think as long as he's making a progression and you're seeing a trend upwards, I think we know what the potential is, and hopefully one day he reaches it.
I also just look at, I don't know if I'm looking too deep into this, if it means nothing, but the Orioles haven't done anything up to this point, at least, to protect themselves in case Holiday tanks again, right? Like, yeah, they still have Ramon Arias, but I mean, Jorge Mateo is more than likely going to begin the year on the IL. It seems like that's where we're trending, right? So, like, what else have they done just in case? They brought in Franklin Barreto. They brought in Jeremiah Jackson. They brought in Vimeo Machine. Like, Noelberth Romero sitting there in AAA. Anthony Servideo sitting there in AAA. Like, they haven't they always bring in that veteran second baseman, utility infielder that everybody hates so much. But they haven't even done that this offseason so far. I feel like that's a lot of confidence that this organization has in Holiday being able to break out as well.
Well, I guess Jordan Westburg could slide over if need be, and then fan favorite Emmanuel Rivera could man third base. yeah, well, then you're going to just have a hole at third base instead of second base. So, yeah, it's a good point. So I think it's a sometimes, and by sometimes I mean most of the time, when you're thinking about what the Orioles are preparing for, thinking about where they're leaning towards things, it's actions over quotes from Mike Elias and company and words. So yeah, the action is they have not signed a guy that could step into second or third base in a permanent role if need be. And to me, that's a huge vote of confidence for not only Jackson Holliday, but Kobe Mayo as well.
And with that, that does it for this episode of Orioles on the Verge. We will be back later this week to look at the Orioles' latest international signing class and break down some of the new prospects joining the organization. That will be coming up later on this week. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, Blue Sky, TikTok, and YouTube. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to our Patreon community and check that out. Become a paying member today at the $3, $5, or $10 levels and have access to our daily top 50 prospects countdown that just got underway this month and is going to continue well into February, so you don't want to miss that. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by BetOnline and part of the Believe Podcast Network. Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to look at the Orioles' latest haul in the international market as the January 15th signing class was announced earlier this week. We're going to break down some of the new prospects joining the system tonight. And that will include some of the bigger names in this class, as well as some of the under-the-radar prospects we think you should have your eye on going forward. And that'll be on tonight's episode of Orioles on the Verge, which is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, to NHL and UFC, BetOnline is the number one sports betting source for the new year. From touchdowns to three-pointers and hat tricks, BetOnline has you covered on every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. It's that time of year. It's the January 15th international signing period, which got underway on Wednesday, and the Orioles jumped into action announcing the signing of 22 new players. And while this class might not seemingly have a big splash, it does seem like a big one, and it marks yet another year in which the Orioles hand out a bonus of $1 million plus the $1 million bonus going to shortstop Jose Pena, one of the youngest players in this year's international class, a 16-year-old. He tops a list of pretty intriguing prospects that is especially heavy on the position player side, and we're going to break that down tonight. But before we get into talking about specific players, I think that it's worth repeating this when we get to this time every year, that in the not too distant past, the Orioles had the most anemic effort in the international free agency market, especially in Latin America, of any team in baseball. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that that was the case. Under Mike Elias and Kobe Perez, though, things have changed quite a bit. And it seems like the Orioles continue to make progress in that area. If you listen to our show throughout the year, you'll hear not only about how some of the top bonus guys are doing, and honestly, there's mixed results there, but Samuel Basallo has exceeded expectations to this point in his career, but also how a lot of the guys that maybe weren't the big names at the time that the class was announced have developed into some of the better prospects in the system. So tonight we want to try to cover both ends of the spectrum. We want to talk about the guys that got the bigger bonuses, and we're going to talk about the guys that we kind of like and we think might break out. But just talking for a moment about the Orioles' international efforts as a whole, it really is striking to me how far it has come in the last few years. And I was curious to get your guys' thoughts on that.
It's amazing. Yeah, it was non-existent before Mike Elias and Kobe Perez came in and took over. And it's just just like the draft, it's another day where, boom, 20 plus names are added to our prospect rankings, or not rankings, list, and into the organization. Just an influx of talent that you're guaranteed to get every January, and then the draft every July. It's every 6 months, there's a nice influx of talent coming in. Yeah, they might not be at the top of the game where signing this guy for $4.5 million, one of the best players in the class. But again, these are 16, 17-year-old kids, and a lot of times those big bonuses don't end up paving the way, working out the way that you expect them to. I think Samuel Basayo is kind of a unicorn in the sense that, I mean, he's just hit his full potential to date on this, and hopefully continues to do so as he grows into a Major League Baseball player. But I think the easy example is how many, like Fernando Tatis Jr., Juan Soto, these guys signed for not very much money compared to the guys that get the most money in the class. I like the strategy that the Orioles use here, where they get a guy for $1 million, sometimes two, and then a bunch of guys in the middle of the pack where it's like between 200 to 500,000, and obviously we had an outfielder this time for 750,000. I like having a bunch of names to follow and see who breaks out and who doesn't, because I trust our player development as well. So just get these guys in here, get them stronger, and make the most of their skills.
Yeah, that last point was kind of my whole thought about this class. Just because, like, if you see the rankings, right? MLB Pipeline has your rankings, Baseball America has your rankings. Again, they're not necessarily talent rankings. They're just based on how much money these guys are expected to sign for, right? And yet, of course, you're going to give better players, or players you believe to be better prospects, more money, but it's not necessarily a talent ranking. And you're talking about 14, 15, 16-year-old kids. So like those rankings, those lists, they're fine. They're fine for reference. They're fine to, talk about or whatever for a little bit, but they're kind of meaningless in my opinion. I don't care. I don't need the Orioles to go off and land one of the top 5 biggest guys every single year. If you can, and he turns out great, fantastic, do that. But I think, like Bob said, just like the draft, I think this Orioles international scouting department has done a fantastic job in the last couple of years, identifying the low cost guys, identifying even those mid range guys are becoming serious prospects in this organization. Yes, you can look at Michael Hernandez and say he's been pretty awful. You can look at Luis Almeida and be like, he's been hurt a lot and hasn't really shown you anything in 2 years. And that Braylon Tavera was miserable last year. He was also hurt as well. Shoulder injury is going to zap you, even for hitters. But I like this idea of, you get that guy at the top of your class, Emilio Sanchez last year, Jose Pena this year for the $1.5 million range. You get that guy who you truly believe in, but then you spray the board and you give yourself as many shots at this as you can, because you have no idea how these guys are going to develop. They're just to get them to the point of being a 15-year-old kid in the Dominican Republic or Venezuela to the point of, where a high school kid you're going to draft. So many hurdles, so many 2-3 years for them to get to that point. And so I like that the Orioles really give themselves as many bites of the apple of this as they possibly can to see who breaks out. Because, I mean, fact is, 22 guys, how many of these guys are ever going to make it to Sarasota and the FCL even? Very few. So, yeah, I like this strategy. Don't look at Braylon Tavera and Luis Almeida's numbers in their age 18, 19 seasons and be like, this organization is failing. You've seen some comments already. Go on the beat writers' social media pages and read the replies to signing day stuff. You realize how little people understand the process and understand how this works. The Orioles done a very good job in the last couple of years. And we talked about last year's signing class, how deep that is and how that is far and away overall the best class they've had in a very long time, I think by a wide margin. We'll see with this class. But you see a lot of potential here, and I'm starting to note that you see some trends that clearly the Orioles think they've hit on with the international guys, and I think they're leaning into that a little bit with this class.
How much money did Frederick Bencosme get to sign? How much money did Luis De Leon get to sign? So, yeah, I mean, the money is definitely not everything. You just get the talent in any way you can, and you work from there.
Let's start with Pena, the guy who, by signing bonus and by most prospect rankings on the international front, would be considered the top of this class. He's going to play the entire 2025 season as a 16-year-old, and there's very positive reports about his athleticism with noted plus bat speed and run speed. And right now, it does look like he projects to stick at shortstop. Now, of course, he's 6'1". We don't know exactly quite how he's going to fill out, but based on what we can see so far, this appears to be a type of player that the Orioles like to target in the international market, which is athletic, can play up the middle, and has some projection in the bat. And Nick, I know you took a deep dive into some of the names that were linked to the Orioles leading up to Wednesday. And I just kind of wanted to start to get your thoughts on Pena.
So oddly enough, yeah, 22 guys on this list. Jose Pena is the one guy who's the hardest to find information about, I feel like, right now. I don't even think I've seen a video of this kid, maybe like one video, but just based on everything, the quotes out there, the scouting reports that are out there on him, I think he's in that Emilio Sanchez mold where it's like it's this, just like the draft where they focus on more so lately. It's you're going after these guys who have maybe the huge raw power isn't there, and there are some guys in the class with some big raw power. Maybe the raw power isn't there, but the hit tool is there. The floor is there with these guys with their bats. The swing decisions are there. They're taking guys who already have good swing decisions, who have decent power projection, but maybe they're more gap to gap. But they got speed, they got defense. They already check a lot of boxes, and then they can build on that. If they do fill out, let's see how they grow physically. And if they do get bigger and stronger and they can keep that athleticism, you start to pull some more power. We'll see what Emilio Sanchez does this year in the FCL and maybe Delmarva. I think Jose Pena kind of fits that mold, and he got about the same amount of money as well. But I like this idea of bring guys in with a solid base and then try to build that power later. And if anything, like, all right, if you've got Joey Ortiz here, then fantastic, right? But I like having that firm base instead of bringing in, giving your high dollar contract here, signing bonus to a guy who is a free swinger who's striking out 40% of the time in the Dominican Summer League last year, and then having to kind of, I don't call it work backwards, but that's kind of what it feels like in my mind, I guess. I don't know. Like, we'll see with Pena, but again, he's the one guy who's like, dude, they keep him hidden throughout all of this? Is he just gonna like shock the world because they like delete your social media, scrub the internet of all your videos? We're not telling anybody about this guy. He's hard to find information about so far.
Yeah, I mean, the secret is like these guys agree, quote unquote, handshake deal to sign with the Orioles like a year or two before today. So my favorite part of this awesome spreadsheet that Nick put together on all these signings is that notes about his power and speed increasing later in the signing process. I love that because once a team handshake agrees with a player, they're kind of a part, they're not officially a part of their development, but they are kind of telling, whoever they're working with, here's what we'd like to see you do. Here's what we'd like to see you improve in. Do this. It might help with that. And he's already seen an uptick in power and speed just from, I'm assuming, when they handshake agreed until closer to like official. Just love that. That just, again, player development is key. Another shortstop. Why do we need 5 catchers? Why is it all shortstops in center field? Because, again, just like in high school, these kids are their best athletes where they're coming from, and the best athletes play these positions. I love it. He's an athlete. And like you said, if you can hit the ball, if you have good swing decisions, and you're naturally going to get on base more often, the Orioles have proven they can add impact to your bat to ball skills. Like Jordan Westberg, Connor Norby, these guys were not expected to have the power that they ended up having. Same with the same point I made, preview sneak peek of the top 50 countdown with Ryan Stafford, who the Orioles drafted last year. And I think you're going to see the same with the international guys. Obviously, it might take until they're getting closer to their 20s, which is still like 4 years away. But yeah, it's a great base to build off of, and the Orioles have proven that they can build. Just get these guys in here and see what you can do with them.
Yeah. And to go off that too, these guys, it's not like they've been at their academies. A lot of these guys live and been training at these academies. It's not like they go straight from the academy and now today they walked into the Orioles Dominican Summer League Academy for the very first time. Like, whoa, this is beautiful. This is amazing. So these guys have been there for like a year. They've been there for like 2 years. They've been working. They've been playing games. They've been training with the Orioles staff for a very long time. And so that's why, again, if you really trust the scouting, this player development system, for them to have already been there for a year or two, and for the Orioles to keep that handshake agreement, and then to have that report of, oh, he's already getting more power out of the bat. Yeah, it's little things like that I like to look at for in these reports. Like this is deep cut stuff here. Like if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, other than just I like these guys, I'm just gonna listen while I'm at work. I don't care about these international prospects yet. I get it. But if you're like truly listening, then shout out to you because you are a fellow sicko. That's one of those small little notes that is a really positive one that you want to pull out with some of these 16-year-old prospects.
The Orioles also came to terms with outfielder Johansel Gomez on a $750,000 bonus. He was ranked 65th on Baseball America's big board. And the profile here is a lot of power coming from the left side. Defensively, looking like a corner outfield option, but the Orioles pick up a guy with a lot of raw power. We saw them take this approach in the last few international classes, perhaps most notably last year with Steven Martinez and Jordan Sanchez. So this feels like another player of that mold, and they're going to try to see what they can get out of that bat, which seems to have a lot of projection in it on already a good amount of raw power.
Based on the limited video, is a tall dude. Without having too much information and without any like a season's worth of numbers to look at, I keep getting like Thomas Sosa vibes here. Like this is this year's Thomas Sosa. And so I want to see like what his first numbers in the Dominican Summer League look like. I think they could be very Thomas Sosa-esque, but Gomez here I think Sosa got like what, 400K? Gomez is getting 750K. I think it's a build. You saw Sosa to Steven Martinez to now is Gomez the next iteration of this big time power hitting corner outfield bat that the Orioles are going to bring through. I like Gomez. He's got a ton of room to fill out in that frame.
Yeah, Thomas Sosa's who came to mind for me as well. Is he Thomas Sosa or is he Luis Gonzalez? I guess time will tell there. What was I going to say? I just had a point that I was going to... Oh, yeah. Small correction that the Cuban guy, Jordan Sanchez, was actually the tail end of the 2022-2023 draft class because they had some extra money left over. And guess what? The Orioles have about $1 million left over still from this class, which could particularly come in handy since Mr. Roki Sasaki is going to give his final rose to a team in the next week or so. And those teams are going to not be able to sign guys that they had handshake agreements with. Handshake agreements aren't really all they're cracked up to be. So maybe the Orioles swoop in and steal a couple guys from that situation, or just like with Jordan Sanchez, they wait until a guy becomes available later in the year and spend that money. But yeah, I like Gomez. I like when I see power hitter, I'm like, that's what I want to see. That's what Samuel Basallo, that's all he was when we signed him. It was like, he's got huge power and might be able to stick a catcher. And Thomas Sosa, again, just huge power. And kind of like the opposite of the Jose Pena, where it's like, oh, you got a nice floor, we can build the power here. I feel like with guys like Gomez, Sosa, we know the Orioles can improve someone's swing decisions. So if you have huge power, you improve your swing decisions, you do more damage more often. And yeah, I'm a fan.
The Orioles were particularly busy in Cuba this time around. So far, 4 players out of Cuba have signed as part of this international class. And perhaps the headline acquisition of that group is shortstop Michael Barrow, who signed for a $500,000 bonus. He ranks 86 on Baseball America's big board, listed at 6 foot, 175 pounds. He has a solid hit tool with good on-base skills and is a plus runner. Right now, profiles to stick at shortstop. From a little bit I've seen on him, it looks like his actions at that position are pretty smooth, especially for somebody that young. So, again, the Orioles targeting someone with a lot of athleticism who plays up the middle, who may have a decent chance to stick at shortstop as he moves up the ranks and gets older.
Yeah, just to kind of lump all these Cuban guys into one quick conversation, I guess. Barrow, like I reshared the video again. I think I found it on his Instagram, and I posted like 2 weeks ago when Francis Romero first reported that Barrow was signing, and then reshared it the other day. Go find the video. Just search Michael Barrow, and you'll find this video. Boomers, trigger warning. You're not gonna like the video. He hits the home run and pimps the hell out of it, and I fell in love with this kid right then and there. I'm not gonna lie. The personality on this guy, and yeah, he was one of the guys the Orioles highlighted. I know we always like to see like, all right, who are they going to package those highlight clips of, and what are they going to say about him? They said 5-tool potential here with Barrow, but he gets the big amounts. Ronald Torrero was I think it was first reported he was an outfielder. I think the Orioles announced him as a shortstop. But either way, Francis Romero has Ronald Torrero as one of the top 10 sleepers in the entire 2025 class. That includes all organizations. So fun to keep an eye out there for him. There is a pitcher. I'm going to butcher this kid's name. This is the one part about this whole show that is troublesome. Junior Villavicencio, $40,000 bonus, but he's a left-handed pitcher, already throws in the low 90s. He's got this massive looping curveball that is a lot of fun to watch. And then the most fun signing is Jason Acosta, the catcher. Apparently had the $300,000 deal with the Mets. The Orioles got him for $375,000. He's a switch hitter, incredible raw power. It was announced today. He was announced as a catcher / outfielder. And I think I saw a report that already like questioned his defense. So maybe that's another sign. The Orioles are buying the bat here. And we know what happened last time the Orioles got a catcher to switch from a New York team to the Orioles. I'm not saying he's Samuel Basallo, but he's already on the Samuel Basallo track. So Jason Acosta, another fun name that I'm going to be excited to watch.
Yeah, I love seeing 4 Cuban kids signed here because it's like, you're always looking for where's the avenue that other teams aren't really. I don't know if many other teams are going to sign 4 guys out of Cuba in one class. It seems like they're a little more like it's always DR and Venezuela. But Acosta, yeah. And I literally did see on a message board, 5 catchers. This is absurd. What is the point of signing 5 catchers? Again, already he's probably going to be an outfielder. Like you don't go from being a shortstop to moving to catcher. If you're going to be a catcher, you kind of have to start at being a catcher, and it's an important position. But yeah, love that we stole this guy from the Mets. Seems like he's going to be a nice addition to the class. I like Torrero a lot. I've seen him play a million times, not just from reading the report. I like what I see there. Michael Barrow, where I think we're trying to get the most Michaels in different spellings. You have Michael Maikol. You have Michael Meykel. I'm a fan, but yeah, I like to see the personality. I like to see the players having fun on the field, and then that's again something that the international guys bring more than the typical Orioles prospect with the white kids coming out of college. So yeah, I'm a fan. I like all these guys. I can't wait to again. It's the same old thing, but it is what it is. I like seeing their names pop up in the DSL when that starts, and just we can track their professional careers right from the beginning as late teenagers.
And the Orioles normally have 2 Dominican Summer League teams, so like you need a lot of catchers, and you just need a lot of kids in general. But yeah, you do need a bunch of catchers between both of these teams. So like. You can almost ignore how many guys also did we talk about last week in the roster prediction episode? How many of the international guys we talked about that are going to be in Delmarva or Aberdeen are already playing a different position? Ellis Cuevas, for example, like you bring in the athletes, like Bob said earlier, you bring the athletes in, and then you'll find a home eventually if you stick.
So as I mentioned on the top of the show, we kind of want to cover as much as we can with this class based on the information we have right now, which is honestly a little bit limited, but we've tried to do some deep dives into these prospects to learn a little bit more about them. So what we decided was that each of the 3 of us are going to highlight one guy beyond some of the names we've already talked about so far. And there's a lot of directions you could go in. So, for instance, the Orioles signed the nephew of Robinson Chirinos uh, to a contract worth $100,000, I believe. But we want to get into some other guys as well. So, Nick, I will start with you with your prospect.
So we only talked about bats, so I figured I'd go with a pitcher. For the Orioles, highlighted one pitcher in their little Twitter series there, Kelvin Zabata. He got the biggest bonus for a pitcher at $290K, a lefty who's up to 94 already. That's good to see from a young left-handed pitcher. Don't know how old he is. But the guy that I am super intrigued by here is Benjamin Vasquez. He's a right-handed pitcher. He's getting 155K. It looks like that is like the third highest signing bonus among the pitchers. He's up to 96, apparently. This is from TikTok video, so take that for what you will. He's reportedly up to 96, but when you watch him pitch, just the delivery looks different among some of these. Again, comparing him to other guys we've seen the Orioles sign at this stage, it's a very controlled delivery. There's very little effort, and he's already up to 96 miles per hour. My question is, in learning more, if we learn some more information about him in the coming weeks, and it's like, oh yeah, he's got a changeup already, or yeah, he's got good feel for a slider already. If it comes out that he's already got good feel for multiple breaking balls, I think Benjamin Vasquez is going to be stake my early claim. We're normally pretty good when we identify these guys early on. I'm going to stake my claim as Benjamin Vasquez on the pitching side, being the guy 3 years from now we're gushing over from this class.
I like it. And if you're wondering why there's always way more hitters than pitchers, at least from the Orioles standpoint, and I like what they do, I think pitchers tend to develop a little bit later. So these are the guys that they're going to grab in June, August. Like, they'll just pick them up as the year goes on for low money. And because, again, you can see high school pitchers, if these kids were in high school, they'd be like sophomores or juniors. Like, you're not fully developed. So as you can give them more time to show what they got, you can find some steals later in the year, which we always see. But I like seeing the pitchers here. Zapata sounds good to me. 290,000 left-handed pitcher. Kind of sounds like Davy Cruz when he was originally signed, with a little more velocity. But Cruz, obviously, we see him. He's made it to Aberdeen as a lefty specialist who walks a million batters. But my pick is going to be Lisandro Sanchez, an outfielder signed for $300,000 out of the Dominican Republic. Nick, in his spreadsheet, writes, tall, slender outfielder, lots of physical projection here, explosive swing. And that is the thing that I wanted to note. Explosive swing, because there is a video linked on our Discord and maybe on our Twitter as well. But, man, this kid just leans back, lets it rip, and when he makes contact, it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. So I'm hoping he can keep that swing, maybe dial it in a little bit. But, yeah, again, I just like these guys with the big power, the impact bats. So give me Lisandro Sanchez as my sleeper.
You know, in the clip that Bob mentions, which I saw, and it's an explosive swing. That's a very accurate description of it. The last clip in that video compilation that we shared, he actually kind of swings off of his front foot. It's a pretty ugly swing, all things considered. He doesn't really plant the front foot correctly. He's struggling to get the bat down there, and it still looks like the ball travels off the bat. So it seems like there's a lot of raw power here.
The first swing in that video, though, that is like a rocket launcher on his shoulder, and it just flies. There's also a note here too. I don't know if he's going to add more, but I feel like maybe this is it, and he's just getting him out early. But Ben Badler over at Baseball America, it's normally later in the summer where he does the full report for each organization in this year's international class. The top guys, the sleepers, the guys to watch. One of my favorite articles. But it looks like he's already linked articles for each team already. And for Lisandro Sanchez, he mentions plenty of tools to dream on if everything clicks. Plus runner, big right-handed power that could be plus, and features an excellent arm, to the point where pitching could be a fallback option. Sign me up.
Michael Givens, here we go.
The guy I wanted to highlight is Frandy Guillen, out of the Dominican Republic, a third baseman who reportedly signed for $250,000. You look at Guillen, and he's got a very compact build right now. I don't know that there is necessarily a lot of physical projection there in terms of him getting taller and stronger. But what you see right now is a player that's already pretty strong, does a great job getting the bat through the zone quickly, and it lends itself to a lot of poolside power. I like that, and I also like from the little bit of defense that I saw from him, very good arm strength. Definitely looks like he could stick on the left side of the infield. And as long as he doesn't fill out too much, the range should play at third base. Again, we have to see him a little bit more in pro ball, but the arm is definitely going to stick there. He's got a very powerful arm. He's got good pull side power. This is a guy that I'm going to have my eye on because it seems like every year there's that one player in the Dominican Summer League who seems to be way above everybody else in terms of power numbers, because we really don't look for home runs or necessarily even extra base hits that first year in Dominican Summer League. We want to see good walk rates, good strikeout numbers. If your WRC plus is above league average, great. But there's always that one guy that when you look at the stat sheet stands out because his power numbers were just a little bit better than everybody else's. I wouldn't be shocked if Guillen's that guy this year.
Yeah, I do find it interesting when they sign like Joshua Lorenzo. Oh, this guy's listed at third base. That's interesting because I think he'll end up being like this huge power hitting first baseman, actually. Guillen announced at third base when it's a bunch of shortstops, outfielders, catchers, up the middle guys. To me, that means they have a tool that the Orioles like, and it's outside of the athleticism. So I kind of am intrigued by Guillen as well, just because, it's a little bit off the beaten path. And again, Jorge Drollard, too, another guy, $250,000 signing, just listed as infielder. So that's interesting to me.
Yeah, I think Badler even notes that Guillen could move to first base, but says it's the bat. It seems to be pretty special already. So that could be something where the Orioles really, really love the power in that, and we'll see. And there's also I was trying to find more information here. Guillen might have some New Jersey connection as well, which I think there's something there. Like he spent some time in Jersey, lived there for a little bit. I don't think it was like a full-on Luis Almeida type situation, but yeah, I like Guillen a lot, especially that swing. He's a thick boy. I almost got as sick as my mind is. I was thinking about what does he look like? Who does he remind me of? I almost imagine Guillen down the road. If he turns out this way, this would be bad. But for the sickos out there, Adamar Rafaela, I don't know why, but that name, if you remember that name, that's who kept popping up when I'm watching Frandy Guillen bat. Don't look at Adamar Rafaela is still playing baseball. He's a big boy now. But I think he's playing in Venezuela or somewhere. But Frandy Guillen gave me Adamar Rafaela vibes. Well, the infield version at least. So I don't know. It's this international class. It's just fun to play around and dream about what they could become. Who do they remind us of? Yeah, I love this time of year, and it's perfect that it's January and not June. I'm so glad it's not June anymore, because this just gave us 45 minutes worth of content, and it gave me something to do all day. I worked for legal purposes. I worked hard today, but it also gave me a lot to do today. It's in the middle of January when it's 20 degrees outside. So
yeah, it used to be July 2nd. It's getting lost in the draft. It's middle of the season. I mean, maybe the teams liked it better in July. I think we asked Kobe Perez that, and he said he's getting used to the January back then. But I love it. I love that it's right around my birthday every year. Nice little mini birthday present to me. And yeah, it's just a nice way to separate. Like I said, every 6 months now, there's an influx of talent coming in.
We'll certainly look forward to following these players throughout the 2025 season. But of course, we still have some offseason in front of us. It was about a month before Orioles pitchers and catchers report to spring training. We will be back next week on Monday night. So for those of you that watch this live or that download the episodes later in the week, a little bit different schedule next week. We might or might not stick to the Monday nights the rest of the way for this year. We'll see. But check us out next Monday night. In the meantime, you can follow us on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, and YouTube. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to our Patreon community and sign up today to become a member. We have memberships available at the $3, $5, and $10 levels. All of them give you access to our top 50 prospects countdown, which just got started a couple of weeks ago and will run well into February. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by BetOnline and part of the Believe Podcast Network.